In a defeat which is quite hard to take for a lot of Spurs fans, the boos were ringing out at half-time at the top, and even at full-time as well. I mean, you were there at the stadium yesterday. I mean, how loud were the boos? I heard it was much louder at half-time than it was at full-time.
Yeah, obviously we're 2-0 down, and I think it was more the manner in how the goals were conceded, which really frustrated the fans. Because I remember thinking like after we conceded the first goal, like fans were starting to get frustrated, but I was like, yeah, we're 1-0 down. But I thought we were playing well. I thought we were the better team before the first goal. The first goal for me was against the run of play. We were forcing Pope into making good saves. So I was like, surely, like if it went half time now, like I don't think you should be hearing lots of fans booing. But then once the second goal went in, and then all of a sudden we started to unravel a bit after those two goals. And then I think it was maybe just a consequence of how the half ended, where we were so poor and we were 2-0 down, and it looked like a bit of a shit show for those last 15 minutes. But it was a bit of a weird game yesterday. It was a really strange game because, at half time, we were 2-0 down, having been, for me, the better team, despite the fact we conceded those two goals at really bad moments, and we were the better team before we conceded, and we were probably unlucky not to have gone 1-0 up on a couple of occasions with some good chances. But the real disappointment for me was actually the second half, where even though we won the second half 1-0, we were by far the worst team in the second half, and actually Newcastle were the better team, and especially after getting that goal back with a lot of time to spare. We got that goal back very early in the second half. What was it, 52 minutes? We got that goal
54,
back 54 minutes. So we got it's plenty of time, and yet Newcastle were the ones creating the chances after we scored, and we barely had a chance. We didn't really threaten them. So from that sense, like the better half, we were 2-0 down, and the worst half, we won 1-0. So in that sense, it was a really strange game. But in terms of how things went in general, I thought in terms of a reaction to how things went on Wednesday night against a very good Newcastle side, I thought we did start the game really well. We were pressing really intensely, really high up the pitch. I thought the centre mids were doing a really good job winning the ball high up the pitch. We were suffocating Newcastle at times. We were forcing them to play long a lot of the time, and our centre backs were gobbling it up. The only disappointment really was again, you would have to say, the attacking output from our wing backs. I thought when we got the ball quickly to Kane and Son, they were causing trouble. But when we got the ball quickly to our wing backs, nothing really came of it, and that was a big disappointment in the first half. But Kane forced a good save out of Pope. Son had a couple of good attempts as well.
In the first 5 minutes, Son had about 4 shots on goal already.
Yeah, I'd say maybe a bit disappointing, the one when he was through on goal, where he tried to little dink over Pope, and it was a bit of a weak effort.
He should have done better there. Yeah.
It was just a weak effort. It wasn't a great effort, and Pope fairly comfortably saved it.
Looked like he mishit it or something.
Yeah, wasn't great. Obviously, yeah, the chances you mentioned early on, they were all pretty much outside the area. So obviously, Son's a massive threat outside the area, but wasn't exactly a clear-cut opportunities. But it looks like if anyone was going to score the first goal, it was going to be us. But again, we had the warning sign when Dyer nearly puts in his own net from a horrendous back pass.
He is just reverting back to type Eric Dyer. The last 2 performances from him have been shocking. Absolutely shocking. Yesterday and against Manchester United. I mean, what's happened to the guy? He had such a good second half of the season last year. He's had such a good start to the season, and you've been mentioning it pretty much all season. You've seen these elements creep back into his game, and now we're like in full flow Dyer mode now.
Well, in the beginning of the season, they weren't costly. They weren't costing us goals, and now it seems like they are starting to cost us a few goals. Not necessarily. I mean, I guess the first goal potentially you can say, even though Lloris. We'll talk about the foul, but even though Lloris should have done better with it, he gets in behind Dyer, Callum Wilson. That was one of the big worries for me going into the game, that Wilson, who's a very strong, physical and fast striker, that if they get a good service into him, he could really run Dyer ragged, and at times he did yesterday on occasion. And Dyer, Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just that moment where I don't know what he's thinking when he nearly passed it into his own net. I mean, it was just a complete overhits it and a really bad accuracy. But it wasn't just that. His passing into Kane and Son, which is usually decent, was really poor. He had a few times as well where his passing out wide to the wing back, which is usually very accurate, out of play, over the heads. And I think you could see as well yesterday, he was frustrated himself. There was a moment where Newcastle made a sub, and I think Wilson was getting subbed off, and he was like, and he wasn't going off at the nearest point, and he was like trudging off. Then Dyer was getting really angry and irate, and he was getting frustrated, and he was like tugging at him, and like he was getting irate at him. And I was, even though he maybe had a right to be a bit angry or frustrated, like how frustrated he was getting at that probably told me he was more frustrated at himself and how he would let the game get to this point where we were 2-1 down and needing Newcastle players to rush off, rather than actually being frustrated at a Newcastle player for taking his time to get off. And I think that was a consequence of his performance, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely shocking display from him. In terms of either side of him, Clement Longley just breezed past way too easily. Almiron just had him for dinner, didn't he? And there was a couple of times where just Longley just gets beaten way too easily. I liked him on the ball yesterday. I thought he did well on the ball, playing the ball into spaces, driving the ball up the pitch at times, but his defensive work yesterday was nothing short of shocking. I don't even understand how you let Almiron breeze past you so easily. I mean, Almiron's been obviously a really good player this year, but to be a top defender in the Premier League, you can't let that happen. You just can't. And Davinson Sanchez on the other side, I thought he dealt with most things that came his way defensively, but on the ball, he was just like giving me a heart attack every time he got on the ball.
He was so poor. He's like him and Emerson again. Every time we pair them together, it's a recipe for disaster. And I think again it was exactly the same. Sanchez can't play out the back. Emerson is clumsy in his own right. As much as I didn't think Emerson was so much the problem in general yesterday. Again, he still does the same thing he always has done, and that's being clumsy on the ball, not really offer anything going forward.
I thought he stood up to most things defensively, though, as he usually does.
Yeah, he was okay defensively, but we need more than that from a wing-back. It's not enough. And I think, again, Emerson was found wanting when we really needed him up the pitch, when there was a lot of situations he could have really provided for the team in attacking situations.
The other side was even worse.
But Sessegnon, man... He was a really bad day at the office, off the back of some really good performances. But prior to the Man United game, I thought it was really poor showing from Sessegnon. I thought he did awful for the second goal. I thought he got really way too easily muscled off the ball by Almiron. And I thought again as well, he offered very little going forward. And when he had ample opportunity to provide good quality in the final third, he was found wanting. So that was really, really frustrating. The only shining lights really were the midfield three. I guess the forward 4-2 in the first half did well, but they didn't really do anything in the second half, apart from obviously Kane got the goal. But the midfield... I thought
Kane was trying his hardest to get something, but the quality around him was just so poor.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought actually Kane had a fairly good game yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with Kane. I think most of his good stuff... Yeah, to be fair, I think Kane was good. I think Son, when it comes to Son, most of his good stuff came in the opening half an hour, and then he kind of flitted out the game. Kane tried.
Such a lack of quality around Kane. You know what I mean? I mean, he was fighting a losing battle for pretty much the whole game. But the midfield three, I thought Bissouma was better. He showed what he can do in maybe flashes yesterday, but I still expect a bit more from Bissouma. Still a bit too reserved, in my opinion. There were a few flashes of him, taking it past players and playing some nice passes, but all in all, it was a bit too reserved for me, like it has been for the majority of his times at Spurs, making silly challenges as well early on. But Bentancur and Skip were probably our best two players on the pitch yesterday, especially Bentancur. I thought he was at it completely, a bundle of energy, going in with those flying challenges and really releasing us to go forward. And Skip, it was really nice to see him back. I said in the preview, I didn't think Højbjerg would be out, but I said, I thought there was a chance Skip could start this game, and he did start, and I thought he played fairly well. He was the one really trying to drive us forward from the midfield, especially in that first half.
He was the only one attacking the space on the right-hand side out of all the midfielders, really. I know Bentancur was good, and I think he was our best player on the day, but it was more good work in the central areas. I thought his dribbling was really good. He was making it very difficult.
Combative.
Yeah, he always is. pace, and I thought just on the ball he was very difficult to get the ball off. He was shielding the ball well, and I thought he was playing some good forward passes. There was one notably to Emerson in the first half, which actually Emerson could have been through on goal, but he took a bad touch and the chance was gone. When it goes to Basuma, I actually thought he was playing the ball playing the ball forward with more regularity than he has in other games, and I was actually a lot more happy with him. Actually, in the second half, I thought he was actually taking a bit more responsibility, which was good. Still, want to see him in even more offensive situations, but I thought it was a step in the right direction, Basuma. But yeah, Ollie Skipp was the only one out of all three midfielders actually trying to support the attack, I felt, in terms of actually being in the final third. And the number of times he was breaking in that space on the right-hand channel, being fed by Kane or by Emerson, and trying to make something happen was really positive. And I think he was actually trying to make those runs forward more often than our other midfielders do. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything to really show for it. Didn't really have many shots on goal or create many chances, but definitely it was definitely positive. He was trying to affect the game, but obviously he did go off after the hour, maybe because his first start. Yeah,
it was tiring.
But definitely a good, positive performance from Ollie Skipp, and those three were probably the shining light. But unfortunately, it's very frustrating when you get that goal back and you just seem devoid of ideas in that second half, and we didn't seem to be able to create much, and we did try and force the issue, but I don't know whether it's Newcastle defending well or Spurs lacking ideas and creativity. But when Lucas came on with, I don't know 20 minutes to go or something, or 25 minutes to go, Perisic comes on with half an hour to go, you're thinking surely we're going to really force the issue now. The momentum's with us, you got the goal, and there wasn't anything really.
Yeah, Lucas
that's
was
the frustration.
Puffing, wasn't he? I thought he brought a bit of energy to the team that it needed, but with a bit of a lack of quality from Lucas. But he was, trying to get the ball right at them and try and force the issue a bit. Perisic, for me, I'm disappointed with Perisic so far, what he's shown in the Spurs shirt. I really am. I think when he first came, you saw that real bit of crossing ability, getting a few assists from the corners. He was getting those knock-ons at the front post as well. But I expected a lot more from Perisic. For me, he seems way too slow. I think that he doesn't attack his fullback well enough. He was doing it maybe at the start of the season, but I don't think he's doing it enough, and he's too poor defensively as well for me, and I think he needs to improve massively for me, Perisic.
I didn't think it wasn't his best cameo coming off the bench. I don't agree that he's been that poor in the Tottenham shirt as you're describing. I think he's been pretty decent since he's come, but I do think he's had some poor performances, like a lot of other players. I still think he's our best wing back, and I think he's shown to be our best wing back this season, but maybe that says more about our wing backs than it does about him. But I still think when it comes to crossing the ball and stuff, no one's better than him in the squad. I think he's even displayed that. And I think when it comes to his pace, I think it's an uncomfortable truth that maybe we have to live with, that we've signed a 33-year-old to play wing back. And at the end, I don't think he's the quickest. I think we didn't sign him the quickest, but then again, I don't think he needs to be the quickest, although it does benefit, it does help. But I think he definitely does most of his good work positionally, and I think his dribbling ability is still pretty decent, but I don't think he had a good cameo when he came on yesterday. I agree with that, and I think Trippier dealt with him pretty comfortably. He had one opportunity, didn't he, when Kane laid it in for him, and he kind of took it first time, and Pope easily dealt with it. Don't remember too many dangerous crosses he really put into the box or anything like that. He wasn't on any of the corners, although I did feel we were looking fairly dangerous from corners in general yesterday. But he wasn't. It wasn't a good cameo for him. I agree with that, and I don't look. Of course, he needs to improve, but I don't think he's been as bad as you're saying. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, but look. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Hugo Lloris. Everyone's talking about him at the moment. Off the back of a wonder display at Old Trafford.
Which everyone just forgets after one.
Which was on the back of a couple of poor displays from him before that. The first goal happens. Lloris comes rushing out. Obviously, Callum Wilson comes to engage him. There's an opportunity there for Lloris to whack the ball away, lead with your foot and just get that ball clear. But instead, he just runs straight and basically clatters into, or Wilson clatters into him. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought it was a foul. And then I looked at it again. I thought maybe not. And then I've looked at it. I mean, I can't really make up my mind. I think I'm going to set it on that it was a foul, but Lloris that did the mistake of not trying to get the ball away, because at the end of the day, whether it was a foul or not, Lloris could have got that ball away. That's the facts of the matter.
I think it's a mistake by Lloris and it's a foul. I think Lloris, he maybe tries to do what Edison or Alisson would have maybe done in that situation, and that's be a bit calm and composed, keep possession, take the ball past the on-rushing attacker and find a teammate and just be calm about the situation. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the quality with the ball that Edison or Alisson can do, so he kind of makes a bit of a pig's ear of it. However, Wilson clearly steps across him and fouls him. I don't understand I really don't get the argument that it's not a foul. I would say that once the referee plays on, is there enough is there enough evidence to suggest that the referee's made a massive howler by not giving the foul? I guess by the fact that you're undecided makes the case that no, there probably is a case that you could say he was a bit weak. However, if in a situation, let's say there's a race between the two, right, and Callum Wilson nicks the ball past Lloris, and Lloris did what Wilson did to him. Yeah. Is it not a very clear penalty and and probably a red card? So I don't understand how it's not.
Everywhere else on the pitch, it's a foul if it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's a clear foul. Imagine that happened in the area and the referee didn't give a penalty. Imagine the uproar there would be. So I don't understand any case really how that's not a foul in any decision. The only case you can make for it not being a foul is Lloris was a bit weak, but I don't think that really comes into it. I think Wilson not only steps across him, he puts his arm out as well. So for me, it's a very blatant foul. I think the referee has made a mistake, and I think that has cost us a goal in all essence. And I think that was a moment of the game we were on top and we were the better team. And so the first goal, especially against a team like Newcastle who have the best defence in the Premier League, is going to make it very, very difficult for us to really get back into it. Obviously, that goal goes in, and then the second goal was an absolute shit show defensively. We can't have any complaints about that because Sessegnon, Lenglet, Lloris's passing wasn't great for it. Sessegnon was weak. Lenglet was roasted, and then the finish underneath Lloris as well. So it was just an absolute shambles, that second goal. And then we're 2-0 down, and against this Newcastle team who have been defending really well. And let's be honest, as much as Newcastle were 2-0 up, they really didn't have to do much to be 2-0 up in that game. No. That was the most disappointing thing.
Self-destruction. Yeah, that's what it was. Completely. It was self-destruction yesterday after a really positive opening half an hour. And me and Nick and Barry were sitting here being like, all right, we're playing well these half an hour. And then that happens, and then heads drop, and we just couldn't find a way back in the game.
But that's the most frustrating thing about it, is that we're playing well. We're doing good things. It's like on the face of it, it was a good reaction to Wednesday, but we're going to halftime 2-0 down and demoralised, and we've shot ourselves in the foot twice. And all of a sudden, the narrative of the game changes that we're playing awful and what a shit show and we're just terrible. And that's frustrating because it wasn't the case for half an hour. But then, once you take the whole 90 minutes into account, you have a right to be frustrated because we didn't do enough in the second half to get back in the game. We got the goal, but unfortunately, we were poor in that second half, and we were much worse in that second half than we were in the first half. But people will probably be more upset with the first half because we conceded 2 goals, which makes it a weird game to analyse. But I think in general, it was a strange game. But it's 2 losses in a row now, and it's worrying that we were able to be on top and not make the most of it. And just a couple moments of weakness, and we're 2-0 down, and that's I guess is a problem. We had similar, to be honest, it was very similar under Mourinho, these problems where we would be playing well, we would be on top, we would not make the most of either we would not make the most of the chances we created, or we would be only 1-0 up and not be more than a goal up. And then we would shoot ourselves in the foot with something would happen at the back.
Who are the players letting us down?
The same defenders now.
Exactly the same players. You know what I mean? And
mostly, yeah.
And these problems won't go away until we address those issues. Unfortunately, that's just the facts of the matter. Dyer, however much he can go on to good form, these mistakes will still creep back into his game. Ryan Sessegnon, you know, he's had a couple of games. He's gone back to what he was. You know what I mean? Not good enough. Maybe it's a one-off game. We'll see what happens with Sessegnon. Sanchez is never going to be comfortable on the ball, and he's always going to give you a heart attack every time he plays. You know what I mean? It's the same players every time that let us down, and it's just so frustrating to see when we were told, oh, we're going to spend all this money in the summer, and we didn't address the key issues in the squad, and that's just the facts of the matter. But an issue in Hugo Lloris, a lot of people were calling up yesterday saying it's time to give Fraser Forster a chance.
Oh, no, I think that's bollocks.
And I'm just like, if you really think Fraser Forster's the way to go over Hugo Lloris, like, where are we supposed to go as a football club? You know what I mean? Like, Lloris, as much as he has made mistakes this season, Arsenal away, I think Sporting away, he made a bit of a clanger.
Sporting?
Was it Sporting? I mean, a couple of games. I can't remember the ones off my head. Was Sporting one of them?
Arsenal away he did. I can't remember too many. I can't remember. It wasn't Sporting. Frankfurt? Or did he make a mistake against Frankfurt?
Maybe it was Frankfurt. Maybe it was. I don't know. But there are a couple of games in there that Lloris has made a few mistakes this season. Obviously, yesterday was another one. It's obvious to everyone that Hugo is not the keeper he was maybe a few years ago. He's still a good keeper. I'm not saying he's not.
Yeah.
Is it time now? Because me and you have been heavy defenders of Hugo Lloris.
Yeah.
Is it time now to start thinking about his successor?
I think we already have. I think we know he's going to need a successor. When he signed a contract, we were well aware that he signed a contract last season. Was it last season? Or two seasons ago.
Last season, yeah.
He signed a contract, I think it was an 18-month or 2.5 year deal. He said it himself. This contract is a view of looking at his successor and looking at the future and and we're going to pick a keeper that's going to be the keeper of Tottenham for the next 10 years. Lloris is, 36 years old now. I'm under no illusion that Lloris is obviously not our long-term keeper and he's going to be gone within 2 years. But I still see him as a quality keeper. I still think he's very good. And I still think, whatever people say, I still think he's one of the better keepers in the Premier League right now. Whatever people want to say about some of the mistakes he made. He had an absolute world-class performance on Wednesday night. No one talked. Yeah. No, that's very quickly forgotten because he made a mistake yesterday. He clearly has still very good reactions. He's still able to make lots of good saves. I still have confidence in him. But yes, we are going to have to look at his long-term success 100%. Because he's 36. Dean Henderson, I think he's doing all right at the moment for Nottingham Forest. I want to see him over. I think he's a good keeper. Whether
he had that really good season for Sheffield United.
He did,
didn't he?
He did. He's a good keeper. Am I convinced he could be our keeper for the next 10 years? I'm not convinced yet, but I do think he's a good keeper. It's difficult. I think it's difficult because he's playing for a Forest team who are really poor defensively. So it's very hard to judge him. It's hard to judge him on two ways. It's hard to be overly critical of him because they're so defensive. But it's hard to be overly praise him because he gets a lot of opportunities to show how good he is, if you know what I mean. Because he gets lots of shots against him. So sometimes keepers can be made to look better than they are because they make lots of saves. Because if they're up against lots of shots, and then all of a sudden when there's less pressure on him, they can be not as good. So it's. I don't know. I'm not ready to commit on Henderson being our keeper yet. But I think he's a good keeper. I think he could be. I'm yet to be convinced just yet. But he's had a good week, hasn't he?
In terms of the stats from the game yesterday, I mean, we had a number of shots on goal. I mean, we had so many shots on goal in the first half an hour, didn't we? Such a shame we couldn't capitalise on that. But let's have a look at the stats and see how they read.
Yeah. In general, they're fairly favourable to us. I mean, we had 17 shots on goal. They had 13. We had 5 shots on target each. The big one is the block shots. We had 8 shots blocked to Newcastle's 5, which goes to show how defensively strong they were. I think in general, we probably had more shots than them. In terms of big chances, you can see we had 2 big chances to their 1. That's probably the one they scored. We obviously scored one of ours. But if you look at the first half, this is a difference, which is interesting. First half, obviously we were 2-0 down, yet we had 13 shots to their 5. 3 on target, but the big one, obviously, of those 13 shots, 7 of them were block shots. They were really getting in front of us and making it very difficult to get the shots on goal. That was obviously the big difference. Shots inside the box 6, shots outside the box 7. They obviously made more saves. So we were on top in the first half. Let's be honest, by all metrics, we were really on top in that first half, yet we were 2-0 down. And yet in the second half, you would think we would be more on top and, Newcastle would be under the cosh, yet we had 4 shots there, 8 in the second half. Inside the box, how many shots we had? We had 4 inside the box. We didn't have any shots outside the box in that second half, which is a bit surprising considering we were chasing the game. We would have thought maybe a bit of desperation.
It so difficult for us, especially in the latter stages of that second half. It was just 2 banks of 4 and we just couldn't break them down. Yeah.
100%. I agree with that. And when it comes to the average position as well, it's interesting. Look at if you see that. So obviously it's fairly standard. You got the back 3, Sanchez, Dyer, Longley. You got Basuma and Bentancur very close to each other. In fact, Basuma's average position was a bit further up than Bentancur's, which is interesting. But look at Ollie Skipp. He's almost like a third striker. Ollie Skipp's average position was higher up than Kane, which was quite interesting. Obviously, Son, as expected, was probably the furthest player up the pitch. But what's probably the most disappointing is the position of the wing-backs, especially when you've got the 3 centre mids there, who are not the most attacking. You'd expect them to be a lot, especially Sessegnon, you expect him to be a lot higher up the pitch, but he's very, very deep in his average positioning. And Emerson as well in his own half. So we only had Kane, Son and Skipp average positioning in Newcastle's half, which maybe penned us back a bit too much at times, and maybe that's why we maybe couldn't get as weren't creating the chances potentially. But I think that positioning from Skipp is interesting. It's almost like we played a 3-4-3 in a way with Skipp as the third striker, interestingly enough, which I think is I must be, because I remember when Skipp was starting games under Conte back in January, and he was the one getting furthest forward. And I remember that was he was told, he said in one of his interviews, Conte told him he needs to be getting further forward and supporting the attack, and that's clearly something that's carried on even since his injury.
From his game yesterday, I really did. He kept pass and move, and we need more of that from our midfielders. And Bentancur can do more of that as well. I want to see him go forward a bit more. He's got the quality too. So Skipp is showed yesterday what our midfielders should be doing on a regular basis, in my opinion.
And then when you go to the subs, obviously Perisic was there. He's a bit further forward than Sessegnon was. Big difference though when the subs. If you look at Longley, he's very, very deep as a left centre back. Yeah, when Davis comes on, he's almost like a left back, a lot further forward. And that's a big difference between Davis and Longley in terms of their positioning. Davis, as I've said before, because he's a fullback by trade, he's a lot more comfortable in those areas, whereas I feel like Longley doesn't feel as comfortable getting in those forward areas. As much as maybe he's better on the ball than Davis, he doesn't get in the dangerous areas or maybe affect the game like that, which Davis does.
Who do you prefer?
It's very difficult. It's difficult to choose. I think Longley is a better player, but is he better for our team? That's a question.
I prefer Davis, I think Davis is more defensively solid, and he also...
I'm not sure I agree with that.
You don't think he is?
I'm not sure I agree with that.
I think he is. I mean, he has had a few poor displays this season, but I think for me, Davis is as likely to get caught out as Longley. As much as Longley got roasted yesterday, it's not like I've never seen Davis get roasted in my life, is it? You know what I mean? No, I know that, but I think that on a consistent basis, I think Davis is more solid than Longley, and I think Longley hasn't got to grips properly with the Premier League yet. I think the game might move a bit too fast for him. He needs to get to grips with it a bit more. Maybe he needs more minutes. Maybe he needs more consistent minutes, because he's been in and out of the team, hasn't he, since he's come?
Well, yeah, because we rotate him. Yeah. We're comfortable with him, I think, not because he's struggling.
I think he is struggling a little bit defensively. I think that the majority of games he's played this season, I've seen maybe one or two games from him that's been properly defensively solid, where I've seen a lot more from Davis this season.
I disagree with that. I think the majority of games he's been solid. I think there are two games that come to my mind where he hasn't been, and that was yesterday, and I think the North London derby. I think any other time he's been on the pitch, I don't think he's been a problem defensively. Longley. What I do have a problem with is actually, as much as I like him on the ball, I don't think he gets into enough positions to ask questions of the opposition the way Davis does. So from that perspective, I think Davis is actually we're actually a lot more likely to open up space and hurt the opposition when Davis is on the pitch, when Davis is coming forward on the pitch and asking questions. Like against Everton, he was like so far forward, and like those overlapping centre backs that Sheffield United do. Like Davis does that position, and Romero as well does it really well. Longley and Sanchez, on the other hand, they just don't. Whether it's a confidence thing or whatever it is, they don't get in those positions anywhere near as much as the other two, and that causes problems in a sense that means that the space isn't as open. We don't open up the space in the final third as much because they're not options there, and it doesn't ask as much questions, so it's easier to defend against.
But the fact of the matter, what you're saying about Longley is in the two games that he struggled is Newcastle and Arsenal.
Yeah,
it's the two big games he's played. I mean, every other game he's played is games where you think that we should get 3 points. You know what I mean? Like the two games that we've come under pressure, Arsenal and Newcastle, two games he played, is the two games that he struggled.
And Davis didn't struggle against Man United. You know what I mean?
No, Davis did struggle against Man United, but you've seen Davis stand up to the challenge in big games before. That one game, fine, he didn't, but you have seen him stand up to the challenge in big games before and be defensively solid. You've seen him against Man City do that. You've seen him against Liverpool do that. You know, you've seen him do that in big games where you haven't seen Longley do that in a big game yet.
Okay, he's only had 2 big games.
And the 2 games he struggled.
Yeah, but I mean, now we're calling Newcastle a big game. I know it's a hard game, but like, no, I get what you're saying. I just think it's harsh to say that he's struggling. I wouldn't say he's been he struggled in those 2 games, but I think in general he's been fairly solid.
And like what you're saying, the job that each of them do for the team going forward, I think Longley first of all needs to learn the role a bit more. But Davis right now just seems much more comfortable in that role than Longley.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. I think, as I'm saying, I think Longley might be a better player, but I think Davis might be better for the team. That's my argument right now.
I think like Longley on the ball, his qualities on the ball in terms of passing ability, you know, you can't really compare to someone like Ben Davis. But I think just Ben Davis just offers us so much more right now.
I think we agree, yeah.
But anyway, what I wanted to ask you as well, there's been a lot of, you know, fans going crazy about the 2 results and the performances recently. Do you think fans are going a bit over the top at the moment? A bit too reactionary?
Anyone who's saying Conte out definitely is, 100%. I think... Look, it all depends on what you expected coming into the season. I never really... As much as I could dream about it, and as much as I could let my fantasies take me over and I can dream about a title challenge... Did I really ever believe we were going to actually win the league?
Tell me about your late nights in bed.
Oh, yeah, come on. That's what I dream about. Did I really think logically that we were going to be in a title race this season and win the league? No. I could dream about it. I could think like, you know, what Conte's done in his past. And that's the only reason that could lend you to believe that we might actually challenge for a title, was the fact that Conte has a knack of getting underperforming teams to a level, to overperform to a level that could actually win the league. He's done it with Chelsea. He's done it with, we could argue Inter Milan as well. Like, he's taken teams from a placing where they were in mid-table to where they won the league. So the dream is he could do that with Tottenham. And he's done it very quickly. He did it when his first season with Chelsea. He did it within 2 years at Inter Milan as well. So if you're expecting him to come in and do that with Tottenham, then I can see why you're going crazy and why it's a crisis and why you're really disappointed if that's what you're expecting. I never really expected that. I expected us to finish 3rd. That's why I said at the beginning of the season we're going to in a battle for 3rd place. With that, you know, with the added caveat of we'll be challenging for 3rd and we'll close the gap on Liverpool and City. Are we still on course to do that? We're still in 3rd at the moment, and we're still on course. We're 3 points behind Man City right now. So at the moment, as long we're still on course to keep that gap lower than 20 points or whatever it was last season. So I'm fairly comfortable where we are at the moment. Where I understand the frustration is, first of all, the squad all of a sudden looks very thin, as opposed to maybe at the beginning of the season where our squad did look fairly deep and we looked like we had options. All of a sudden, a couple of injuries. Well, I guess as you say, a couple. It's four from yesterday.
Big injuries as well.
Big injuries. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's big injuries, but nonetheless, when you look at the front line, a couple of injuries and we look completely no depth at all. Whereas, you know, if you're Man City and let's say Foden and whatever Foden
but Man
and
City's
whatever.
the only argument to that can actually stand up to.
Yeah,
to
but that's
those
who we're
amount of
competing with.
injuries.
That's who we're competing with.
I know, but if you're saying that you never thought we would win the league, and it's just, so we're not actually competing with Man City. We're competing with the likes of Arsenal, the Liverpools, the Chelseas, and the Manchester Uniteds.
Even Chelsea, you could argue, if like they have a couple of injuries and they still have a lot more options than us. I mean, like Ziyech is like 7th choice. You know what I mean? Whereas, our 7th choice is like probably an under 19s player or whatever. But and which I get. So from that point of view, I understand people are worried about the squad depth right now, and even Conte himself is starting to get a bit worried about it. And I guess the other worry is the level of performance. You could argue that. Obviously, Man United was terrible. The second half yesterday was terrible. In general, this season, there's been a lot of underwhelming performances, even though we've been winning games. So if fans are starting to voice their frustration about that, that's understandable. But anyone saying Conte out and it's everything's a disaster and everyone's rubbish and we have to sell everyone and rip everything up and these players are letting us down time and time again. Well, they didn't let us down when we've won the other 7 games out of how many games do you have this season? 11.
Yeah.
So we won 7 out of 11 games. So did they let us down in those 7 games? Well, we won. But all of a sudden, the 4 games we didn't, they let us, now they've let us down. And you could say that, but let's not act like these are relegation players and these are terrible players. They are who they are, and they might be good enough for 3rd place. They're not good enough for a title challenge, and we know that. Anyone saying that the manager should be, a lot of people calling for Pochettino to come back and stuff like that. I just disagree. I just completely disagree. I think Conte's doing the best of what he's got at the moment, and I think it's pretty good. We're in 3rd place. I mean, that's a pretty good job. You can't take that for granted that we're sitting in 3rd at the moment, even though it's early in the season. And I think what I am worried about is the injuries right now. The fact that we're so heavily reliant on a small set of players in certain positions like Romero, Højbjerg, those players that now that because they've played every game, and as Conte said, the fatigue is settling in now. They're at risk to injuries, and are we in for a bit more pain before the World Cup comes around? I think we're going to have to do very well to not say to win any game, but to really keep ourselves in 3rd place before the World Cup, and just try and keep keeping those results ticking over as the injuries clock up. Especially as in the forward line, that's a massive worry that Richarlison and Kulusevski might not be seen before the World Cup, and we're heavily reliant on Kane and Son. And if one of those goes down, then we're in massive trouble. So I do see some danger, to be honest, between now and the World Cup. But I think where we are at the moment, from what we've done up until now, I'm not that unhappy with. But it is concerning that we've lost 2 in a row and the injuries are clocking up. I think I think people are right to be concerned, but to be outraged and angry and to get on the manager's back and think this is down to the manager, I think it's foolish.
Yeah, and I think that, talks of managers out and crisis mode and all this is just way too premature. Too premature.
What I would say is we're not in crisis mode, but are we that far from it that on the back of the fact that we are 2 defeats in a row and the injuries are clocking up and we are maybe a few injuries away from being in crisis mode from a team perspective? That's the worry. And the worry thing is at the moment is that I feel like the way we play at the moment is that when mistakes start creeping in, all of a sudden the results are much harder to get, and the mistakes are starting to creep in at the moment, and especially fatigue with that creeping in. I can see. I don't know. I am worried. I am worried right now about what the future holds before the World Cup. How many results we're going to get.
Luckily, there's not too many games before the World Cup.
I think we need that World Cup break to come.
3 more games. What was it? Bournemouth, Liverpool, and Leeds.
Yeah, and I actually think we need that break to come as soon as possible.
Yeah, and only last week I was saying, this World Cup's coming a bit too soon. Yeah. We're about to click. We're clicking, and all this kind of stuff.
You didn't foresee Romero and Højbjerg getting all these problems, and all of a sudden we're looking a bit thin. And as much as people I'm just going to say this, as much as people are calling for the 3-5-2 formation, I don't know if it's the best formation for us.
I think 3-5-2 could be a good way to go, but you need an attacking midfielder in there, in one of the three.
Not only that, I think you need better wing backs.
No,
there's
sure.
more
response for sure.
because
you need better wing backs both systems.
When you're
3-4-3 can work better without it. Yeah.
Exactly. When you're 3-4-3, at least you have more attacking options and you're not so heavily reliant on your wing backs to attack. In the 3-5-2, it's like you have the two strikers and you don't have an attacking midfielder, so no real midfielder is really going to make that much of a difference going forward unless you get that odd Højbjerg goal here and there. So you're really relying on the width to come from your wing backs and to provide good quality crosses and stuff like that. And when we have the wing backs like Seto and Emerson playing like they were yesterday, and Son and Kane are getting shackled, then there's nothing really we offer. And that's what we did offer in the second half, absolutely nothing.
What about a 3-5-2? Someone just mentioned it in the comments. What about a 3-5-2 with
Kulusevski? Yeah, but he's injured.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I'm saying just as an idea.
I mean, that could work better. I mean, I'd much rather have Kulusevski in a 3-4-3, but I do think 3-5-2 with Kulusevski at wing-back would work much better than when people at Emerson. And the problem with when you put someone like Doherty there is, I like Doherty, but does he have the physicality that Emerson has to really dominate that right-hand side in a 3-5-2 when he doesn't have as much help? That's also an issue. Can he get forward as much when he doesn't have Richarlison or Kulusevski helping him out on the way back and he has to really dominate that wide area? I think he's also much better in a 3-4-3 than a 3-5-2. So the problem is we've moved to 3-5-2, but without
really have a choice.
Yeah, we've moved it we moved it out of necessity rather than a tactical switch, and I think it's leading to the players not really right now. I don't think the team that we have, as much as we have to because we don't have any other strikers, I don't know if it's the best way to play. And I think the sooner we can get maybe Lucas back in, I think maybe that would be better because at least it would be more of a threat going forward.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Let's finish off on Conte's comments last night in his post-match interview, I think with Sky or whoever it was. Him saying that if this team played one a week, we could fight for something important. But because we've got 3 games a week, because the injuries are clocking up, because the squad just isn't where he wants it to be, it's going to be very difficult for us this season. Is that something that you want to hear from your manager, or is he or you just want to temper the expectations? Is he doing the right thing?
Well, you might not want to hear it, but it's reality, I think, at the end of the day. I think that's the reality we have to face. And I think he is always, I mean, not always, but a lot of the time when he talks about these things, he can be honest, maybe too honest to a fault, then maybe people could argue. But I think that's true, especially now with these injuries. The us playing in a week is definitely hindering us. Hopefully, if we can just somehow get past Lisbon, if we can beat Lisbon and maybe even Marseille drop points and we can finish, that can even be us top of the group wrapped up. That can maybe ease our the burden on the squad, and maybe Marseille, we can rest a bunch of players and not have to worry about the result and that. But right now, it is hurting us because without Kulusevski and Richarlison available, right now it all falls on Kane and Son, and we can't even afford to rest them. We can't even afford to take them off. We can't even afford to give them a rest in game because we're so heavily reliant on them. And unless we're like 3-0 up at half time or something, we're never going to get to a stage where because right now every game is a battle. Every game there's one goal in it. I mean, I know we lost 2-0 to Man United, but every game is close. So unless we're blowing teams away, which we're not, then how reliable we are on Kane and Son is only going to grow as long as they're injured. So us playing 2 games a week is naturally going to be a problem. And then you add in Højbjerg and Romero, all of a sudden it's a massive problem. Then not even saying what more injuries might come. Because when you're relying more heavily on these other players because there are injuries, then the likelihood of those players getting injured,
doesn't it?
It's a cycle. It's a self-fulfilling cycle that the more heavily reliant on the players you have left because of the injuries you're getting is going to make the likelihood that they get injured more likely. So that's the concern right now, that these injuries are clocking up and we got very important games coming up. Having said that, I still think we're in an okay position in general because of the wins we've gotten earlier in the season. We've put ourselves in a decent position where it's not all doom and gloom, even if we lose a game like yesterday. And hopefully we have enough that we can still get past games like Bournemouth away on Saturday and hopefully Lisbon on Wednesday. But definitely when we come up against really good teams, we're experiencing very, very big problems right now, and that's what's showing on the pitch, and that's what Conte's alluded to. And I think he's absolutely right when he talks about the schedule being a problem for us. But hopefully second half of the season, maybe when the injuries are back and maybe with an additional 2 in January, we'll ease it.
Would you take going out the Champions League early if it meant us playing just one game a week and really, being able to concentrate on our season?
No, because I think the message that sends out of going out in the Champions League early is too detrimental to the perception of Tottenham. I think it'll be too embarrassing.
In the long term, it could work better for us in the future, because if we go out early, concentrate on this season, get back into the Champions League and get some signings in the summer to beef up the squad even more, and then we can maybe next season have a go at both.
I can tolerate going out of Europa League or Conference League early with a view of getting to Champions League, but I don't see the sense of exiting the Champions League early to get back in the Champions League. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, on the basis, if you say it like that, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But if you say it in a sense of it'll give us the opportunity to, make our squad stronger. Because right now, everyone's saying, Conte's saying we can't handle 2 games in a week. So how are we even...
Right now we can't because of injuries. Right now we can't.
Yeah.
Maybe when in the second half of the season it'll be different. So right now it's difficult for us, 100%. It wasn't difficult for us earlier in the season when we had a fully fit squad. I thought we were managing it pretty well in general. I know we lost to like Lisbon and stuff, but I thought in general we were getting the results in the Champions League and we were getting results in Premier League, so it wasn't a massive issue. Now the injuries are clocking up. It's a lot more difficult, 100%. Doesn't mean we should be happy if we exit the Champions League early.
No, I'm not happy.
But like,
I'm going to be happy if we exit the Champions League.
And could it benefit? Look, first of all, we would have to finish bottom of the group because otherwise we drop into Europa League and it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
And the message that sends out, finishing bottom of the group we were in.
Maybe not bottom of the group, but out in the first knockout round or something like that. You know what I mean? Would I not happy, but like if I said to you right now, we go out in the first round of the knockout stages of the Champions League, and that gives us, a much bigger chance to do better in the league. Or
it depends.
We go out in the quarters or the semis and potentially screw up both.
It depends. Depends what you're talking about. You'll say it depends. I mean, this hypothetical. Would I accept exiting the Champions League early with a view of getting top 4, or is it am I accepting leaving Champions League early with a view of maybe having a title charge? What's the
basically play Champions League and risk not getting top 4 for next season, or go out the Champions League and say I've got 100% getting top 4 next season and back in the Champions League next season. Obviously, you've got to take going out early, right?
Do we have a chance of winning the Champions League?
There's always a chance.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's too difficult hypothetical to answer. I depend because this is all after the January. I don't know what we've done in January. You know what I mean?
In January.
We know that. We need a deeper squad. The squad isn't deep enough right now to win both. But
what I'm saying is, with the squad right now, can we really fight on all 4 fronts for the rest of the season? Do you think we can? We have to be extremely lucky with injuries if we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Extremely lucky.
Yeah.
Which is, luck and Tottenham don't go together.
No, we don't. I mean, as long as you're in the Champions League, there's always a chance of glory. You never know in the Champions League. You never know what's going to happen. So I would never say I want to go out in the Champions League early. I can accept it in the other 2 because you're fighting to get something better. But there's nothing better than the Champions League. There's nothing better. So it's a bit like saying, would you exit like the Euros early to qualify for the World Cup? It's like, no.
Yeah, but the way I'm thinking is like, if we go deep in the Champions League, is that risking us not getting into the Champions League for next season?
Then also you're fighting
squad?
To win the Champions League. It's like nothing bigger to fight for.
Yeah, but can you fight? Can you even fight to win the Champions League with the squad that we have right now?
Well, you never know. Chelsea won the Champions League and finished sixth. You know what I mean? So you just never know. I would never accept. I would never say to Spurs to throw in the towel in the Champions League, because the Champions League is the ultimate. You're not fighting for any. There's nothing bigger to fight for than the Champions League. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult to win it, and I don't think. Obviously, we're not favourites, and it's going to be very unlikely. But that you can't. There's nothing more. There's nothing bigger you can fight for than Champions League. As long as you're fighting for the Champions League, that's what you play football for. That's what you're fighting for. So, even if you could argue that we would have the squad to cope for both, but I would never want us to exit the Champions League early.
Do we play football to compete in the Champions League, or do we play football to maybe win a domestic cup or win the title? You know what I mean? Win some silverware. You know, what would you prefer, to compete in the Champions League or to win some silverware?
No, that's not what you were asking me before.
I'm asking you now.
Would I rather compete in the Champions League or win silverware? Do I have a chance of winning the Champions League? Am I definitely not going to win it?
You'll definitely not win the Champions League.
So would I rather definitely not win a competition or win another competition?
You can't say definitely not, because you're in the competition, but the likelihood is that you won't win it.
I need more clarification. Would I rather be in the Champions League
with the squad that we have now,
or win a cup,
or let's say go out the Champions League early and have more chance to win a domestic cup?
And have more chance of winning a domestic cup. And so if we stay in the Champions League...
Either way, these hypotheticals are all stupid games. Like,
I'm not the one asking them.